All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of D&D Deep Dive, the show where we dive deep into classes, subclasses, and other features of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons to help you get the most out of your choices. So, today, we are going to be going back into the realm of the new by looking at the moon. Yeah, I know it doesn't quite rhyme, but they both have ooh in them, like new and moon. Like we're talking about the moon cleric. Yeah. Quick reminder: if you're enjoying this stuff, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon and turn notifications on. All those things super important for the video being seen by other people. And therefore the channel growing and me being able to do more cool stuff. Yeah, maybe if this channel gets big enough one day, I will actually be able to work with the Critical Role people on something. Like, that would be super cool, right? Anyway, so, the moon domain. We're going to stick with the Cleric. And we're going to be going through the new subclass that was introduced in Tal'Dorei Reborn, the moon domain. Now, quick reminder on 5th edition class design. In 5th edition, every class is designed to play very, very differently right from the beginning. In order to do that, there are these things that we call defining features. A defining feature is something either unique to the class, or maybe it's not unique, but they get it earlier than other classes or can use it in a different way than other classes. And in order for something to be a defining feature, it has to show up within the first 2 levels. So, even though I said this in the, literally the last video, we're going to talk about it again. Defining features for the Cleric. The big defining features, their channel divinity. Yes, they do technically share this with the Paladin, but the Paladin uses it in a very different way. It's a one-and-done ability for the Paladin, and they get it back on a short rest. The Cleric, it starts off as a once per rest ability, but once they get to 6th level, it becomes 2 per rest, and they eventually get a 3rd use per rest. So the Channel Divinity feature is utilized significantly more by Clerics than it will ever be used by Paladins. And the other defining feature is technically their Divine Domain. They choose their subclass, which is called a Divine Domain, at 1st level. So some of the features of their subclass become defining features for that flavor of Cleric, because the rest of the subclass is built around it, and it massively changes how the Cleric plays. And then obviously they're spellcasters. So part of the customization of the Cleric is always going to be what spells you choose. They are divine spellcasters that prepare spells from a spell list every morning. So they technically have access to the full list of Cleric spells plus their domain spells every morning, and they just pick the ones they think are going to be best for that morning. So, that being said, how does the Moon Cleric deal with all this stuff? Well, let me tell you. First you can get it for first level is your domain spells. As I mentioned in the last video, domain spells are spells that are always prepared. They don't count against the number of spells you have prepared. Some of the spells will be spells from the Cleric spell list that you just always get because they make sense for your subclass. Other ones will be spells that your Cleric normally couldn't utilize, which makes them that much more interesting. For the domain spells, the first things first that I have to mention this simply because so many people undervalue this, probably one of the most useful first level spells in the entire game. You can use this spell all the way up to 20th level and it is always useful. That spell is Fairy Fire. Fairy Fire is incredibly useful. It's an area of effect spell. It's not very big. It's only, I believe it's like a 10-foot cube. So at most you're ever going to hit 4 people with it. But it's a single dex save. They fail their save. For a minute, they have All attacks against them have advantage, and they can't benefit from invisibility. So Fairy Fire can detect invisibility. As long as you know a rough 10-foot area where they might be, Fairy Fire it. If they fail their saves, they're not invisible anymore, and you have advantage on all your attack rolls. It's a concentration spell, but so are half the other spells in the Giga game. So I'm a huge fan of the fact that Moon Domain Clerics get Fairy Fire. It's a massively useful spell. I think everybody should use it. And then some other stuff. Like, when you look at the spell list, I really like it, mostly because the spell list itself is very evocative of the moon and just kind of dreams of things. Like, here's a few of the spells. Invisibility, Moonbeam. Moonbeam's another one that's super fun. That early on in the Adventurers League, like first season of the Adventurers League, Moonbeam was basically, we used to call it the death laser, because people intentionally misread how the spell works. The spell, basically anyone that's inside the beam when they start their turn, or the first time they enter the beam on their turn, they take damage. Well, how it was misinterpreted during the first season of the Adventurers League was you can move the beam on your turn. And so they would just move the beam and would just run it over the bad guys and would go, well, they entered the square, or rather they entered the area of effect, or rather the area of effect entered them. And they'd go, and they would just go, and it was super fun but massively but broken. Even when even when you use it as written, it's still a fun spell. And obviously it's Moonbeam, so Moon Druid makes sense. Then you start getting things like Hypnotic Pattern, Hallucinatory Terrain, and then Dream and Pass Wall. Like there's interesting spells that really make this feel like a very kind of mystical, almost again, this almost feels like a dream druid, or not dream druid, dream cleric. I have druid is the very next class on here, and so I keep seeing the word druid right in my face. But I mean, it almost feels like a dream cleric, which I like. I like the fact that idea of dreams is kind of mixed in with the idea of the moon. Like, it just, the whole thing is super cool. Yeah, I like moon stuff. Like, my first class in World of Warcraft, which was the first MMO that I really got into, long before I started doing D&D. My first class was a druid that I played all the way through. The character still exists. The account got hacked, and I never got it back because I didn't care. And then I started a new account later on. So, but I believe the character still exists unless the hackers deleted it. Yeah, and druids are all about the moon. Like, they're patron deity of the night elves, which were the big class that did druids back in Vanilla WoW. I think they might have been the only class that did, or the only race that did druids. I can't remember anymore. But Elune was the moon goddess, and that was their patron deity. So I like moon stuff. I like the domain spells. They're pretty cool. Moving on. Also at first level, you get Clarity of Catha. When a creature within 30 feet of you that you can see makes a wisdom saving throw, you can use your reaction to grant that creature advantage on the save. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, regaining all expended uses when you finish a long rest. This is another thing that's kind of interesting, because this, as much as a lot of people won't think about this is an action economy controller. Hidden in advantage on saving throws. The reason I say that is wisdom saves generally are spells that modify the action economy. If you're unaware of what I mean when I say action economy, in 5th edition D&D, the action economy is effectively every single thing that you can do on your turn, multiplied over your entire party. So everything that your party can do. That includes actions themselves, also bonus actions, moves, and reactions. Whichever side has more of those things available to them that they can actually use is going to have advantage in combat. So one of the most useful things you can do in 5th edition is control the action economy. Give your team more actions that they can use, or take away actions from the opposing team. And wisdom save spells generally affect the action economy in a number of ways. A good example of a wisdom save spell is Hold Person. Hold Person paralyzes a target, which affects the action economy in 2 different ways. One, a paralyzed target can't take their own actions. So that takes out, if it only lasts for a single turn, that takes out an action, a bonus action, a move, and a reaction. That is 4 things that a single spell has just taken off the table for a team. Combine that with all attacks against a creature that is paralyzed, which is what the Hold Person spell does, have advantage. And any melee attacks made within 5 feet, if they hit, are automatic critical hits. So it also means that any attack rolls against this creature are going to be significantly more likely to do what they are intended to do. Combine that with any melee attacks go from just hits into critical hits. It means the actions that the team is taking against this person are going to just be better versions of those actions. Hits turn into critical hits. Things that normally would have missed are going to hit. So Hold Person changes the action economy. It's an action economy control spell. A lot of wisdom spells do that. Things like Dominate Person or Dominate Monster are wisdom saves. A lot of charm effects are wisdom saves, which are going to affect what abilities your character can do, either against the charmed creature or maybe even against your own allies, depending on what spells are being done. So Clarity of Catha actually is an anti control ability. I like the fact that it's tied to the proficiency bonus. That means that it gains power gradually as you level up. Things that are tied to ability score improvements means they're at their most powerful at level 8. Almost always they're going to be their most powerful at level 8, and they never get any more powerful. So I like that. There are so many different situations where giving a creature advantage on a wisdom saving throw is useful. It does also mean you really need to know your party, because you have to use your reaction to do this, meaning you can only do it once per round. And because this is a once per round kind of thing, if multiple targets get hit by something that require wisdom save, you need to know which ones are going to benefit the most from it. Maybe you have one party member that already has a really high, like they're proficient in wisdom saving throws. They already have like a +10 to their wisdom saving throws. They probably don't need the advantage on it. But you have another person that maybe has a +2. Will give them the advantage. On the other side, if you already know what the spell save DC is going to be, because other people have either passed or failed it, if you know this is like a 21 DC and you have one of those people that maybe they have a negative wisdom modifier, there's nothing you can do that's going to give them the ability to make that as a save. Because even if they rolled a nat 20, that would turn into a 19, which is still 2 below what they need to be able to make this as a save. So it would be a complete waste of time for you to give advantage on a wisdom save to someone that's never going to make it. So this is an ability that does kind of encourage you to know your team and know which ones are going to have the most need of it. Smart enemies will target the people that they consider the most weak-minded, the ones at the lowest wisdom score. I used to do that. I had a campaign where we had a barbarian we had a barbarian in it, and every so often I would put in creatures that would have the ability to like mind control and things like that, which generally tend to be wisdom saves, and I would target the barbarian, partially because one, they never looked incredibly smart and the enemy would know that, and two, when you are mind controlling a creature, it tends to be more beneficial to mind control someone that, you know, maybe has multi-attack and does a lot of physical attacks. Spellcasters tend to be significantly more difficult to mind control in general, and a lot of them have other things that make them just less than ideal mind control targets. Probably the easiest of that being, well, if you render them unconscious and then bring them back out of unconsciousness, the mind control will end. So yeah, high hit point creatures like barbarians tend to be really nice mind control targets. And then the barbarian was a berserker barbarian who eventually got mindless rage, making them immune to mind control. So that's a little give and take that you get. But yeah, so Clarity of Catha, I like it. It's cool. Moving on. At second level, you get your first channel divinity option, Blessing of the Full Moon. As an action, you instill a willing creature of your choice within 30 feet of you that you can see with one of the following blessings of your choice. Blessing of the Watchful Moon. For an hour, the blessed creature's speed increases by 10 feet and has advantage on wisdom, perception, or survival checks involving smell or made to track a creature. Or Blessing of the Blood-Drenched Moon. For 10 minutes, the blessed creature has advantage on attack rolls against a target if at least one of the blessed creature's allies is within 5 feet of the target and the ally isn't incapacitated. So you basically have two different flavors of this. One is mostly an out-of-combat use. It's for tracking, but it increases speed by 10 feet, which can be really, really useful. Especially if it starts stacking with other abilities that maybe double your speed, or maybe give you something that maybe gives you a fly speed equal to your regular speed, or a swim speed equal to your regular speed. Anytime you increase the speed, it's going to be useful. The advantage on perception, wisdom, perception, or survival to either smell better or track a creature can be useful. That tends to be something that's out of combat. But in combat, an extra 10 feet is an extra 10 feet. And given to the right character, can be really, really useful. Something like a Drunken Fist monk, they effectively get the ability to disengage for free when they use their flurry of blows. Or any creature with a mobility feat, anytime they make an attack against something, they don't provoke opportunity attacks. So giving them additional feat would give them even more ability to kind of dance around and do hit and run kind of the things. The other way you can do it is it's an MMO term, but it does work in D&D as well, to a lesser extent, is a character that's trying to effectively kite an enemy. Which is basically you attack an enemy, but you keep moving so that the enemy can never get close enough to actually attack you. That can be super, super fun if you extend their speed a little bit to the point where maybe normally it'd be 30 feet and 30 feet, and so the other person just gets a little bit of a boost and they do it. But if you have an additional 10 feet, they can never quite get up to you and just keep peppering them with arrows or spells or whatever. So a lot of different ways to use that. The other one is effectively Pack Tactics. Pack Tactics is an ability of a bunch of different monsters in the monster manual and various other things. But basically, if you've got an ally within 5 feet of the creature, you get advantage on all your attack rolls. There are so many different things that are useful about having advantage simply by having someone else near the target. The people that this is most useful for are the people that tend to either hit really hard when they hit, or that have really good crit effects. So things like rogues. Rogues have really, really great crit effects. Barbarians are crit machines. Paladins work really, really well with crits. And anytime you're rolling advantage, you're going to get more you're going to have a better chance to crit because you're rolling 2 dice instead of 1, and you get to pick the higher one. The other thing that's kind of nice about this is it does mention, specifically it says, on attack rolls against a target, if at least one of the blessed creature's allies is within 5 feet of the target and the ally isn't incapacitated. It mentions nothing about the target of the blessing needing to be within 5 feet. So this is not purely this is not purely a melee focused thing. Anyone that makes attack rolls can benefit from this. Especially things like the champion fighter, they get an expanded critical and they get a ton of attacks. So champion fighter with a magic weapon that adds damage dice to your attacks, like a fling tongue or a frost brand weapon, those are going to be especially useful for this because they just get tons and tons of extra damage. So yeah, I love everything about it. Super cool. Moving on. At 6th level, you get your second channel divinity option, Mind of Two Moons. By expending 1 use of channel divinity, you can cast a second concentration spell while already concentrating on a first spell, as long as both spells are on your list of moon domain spells. If you need to make a constitution saving throw to maintain your concentration on both spells, you make the save with disadvantage. On a failure, you use concentration on both spells. So this is a really, really big deal because the prime balancing factor of magic is the concentration system in 5th edition. Basically, any spells where if you were to overlap them become massively broken are concentration spells, which makes them impossible to overlap on the same character. You have to have multiple characters casting the spells in tandem in order to overlap concentration spells. This takes that away, which could very well break the game. However, it does limit it specifically to just your moon domain spells. Which is, for me, is a little bit more limiting than I think it really needs to be. I think this would work just as well if only one of the spells had to be from your moon domain spell list. I don't think giving just complete, hey, you can just burn a channel divinity and concentrate on 2 spells, I think that might break the game, especially at 6th level. That is a extremely powerful ability. But at 6th level, the spells that you would have the ability to use this with are Fairy Fire. I don't know I think Silent Image is a concentration, Invisibility, and Moonbeam. Invisibility and Moonbeam can't be used in tandem because Invisibility can't really be used in tandem with anything, because as soon as you cast another spell or anything like that, Invisibility ends. That's why there's greater visibility. So this is really, you can put Fairy Fire and Moonbeam together, or Fairy Fire and Silent Image together, or Moonbeam and Silent Image. And the one thing that I think might be kind of a fun combo there, Silent Image and Moonbeam could be super fun, because you could create a silent image of some sort of really, really dangerous creature or something, and then Moonbeam them and actually make the silent image do damage. Like, that would be super fun. But beyond that, like, again, Fairy Fire is just a useful spell in general. Combining it with Moonbeam, I mean, there are good things about that. Again, Moonbeam is a fun spell, and it's a relatively useful spell, especially if you're dealing with shape changers. Moonbeam, if they fail their save, they instantly revert out of their shape changed form. It's really, really good against shape changers. But yeah, right at 6th level, there's really not a ton of useful things you can do with it. When you get up to greater invisibility, well, then you can, greater invisibility doesn't end until you lose concentration. That becomes super useful. But again, as far as like really interesting combos with this, you could do greater invisibility in Major Image, maybe, and do something interesting. I don't think Dream is really a combat spell. I'm not familiar with the spell Dream. So I'm going to real quick look up this as a spell. Dream on! Sorry, I can't sing Aerosmith. So Dream is a... Oh, that's Cleric level, spell level. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. So yeah, at 6th level, they would also have access to Hypnotic Pattern and Major Image. So a little bit nicer. But Dream. Dream is a 1-minute cast time. And it's not a concentration spell. So that doesn't matter. Passwall, also not a concentration spell. So yeah, the number of combos you could make with this is so incredibly limited because it limits both of them to moon domain spells. And the list doesn't have a ton of concentration spells on it. And one of the concentration spells, by definition, cannot be cast with other spells, because as soon as you cast a spell, invisibility ends. So, yeah, I'm not particularly fond of this. I would much rather it be as long as one of the spells on your list of moon domain spells. Then this becomes something that's really, really powerful and is actually worth using your channel divinity on. Because right now, I can't come up with a situation where it'd be more beneficial to have 2 concentration spells from your spell list, your domain spell list, than it would be to give a creature advantage on all attacks as long as an ally is next to the enemy. Like, I don't see a situation where it's ever going to be the right answer to do that. So yeah, that one feels a little bit underpowered. It's a cool idea, and I think we've seen other subclasses. I don't think any have been officially published, but we've seen other subclasses where they flirted with the idea of allowing multiple concentrations to go on. This one misses the mark because it's so limited that it kind of neuters it. Anyway, moving forward, at 8th level you get empowered cantrips. Again, this is 8th level. You either get Divine Strike or Empowered Cantrips. That's how clerics work. It kind of tells you basically what you're doing when you're not casting leveled spells. And this is something that one of the comments on my previous cleric video mentioned that, well, it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have for the blood for the blood cleric to have bloodletting focus, which affects the spells you cast, and then Divine Strike, which affects melee attacks. You can't make melee attacks and spells in the same turn. It doesn't work that way. Well, and I mentioned in my reply, Bloodletting Focus specifically applies to leveled spells. Divine Strike applies to what you're doing when you're not casting a leveled spell. Generally, you have a choice of casting a cantrip or making an attack when you're not casting a leveled spell. And as you get higher and higher, you're generally going to be doing more and more spell casting because you have more spell slots. But you will always have situations where you're like, you know what, I don't really have a spell that is worth using in this situation. I'm going to use a cantrip, which I can use forever and ever, or I'm going to bop them in the nose. And that is what either Divine Strike and Empowered Cantrips is supposed to do, is to give you a good option as you level up to do things that aren't casting leveled spells. Because despite the fact that, yes, the cleric is a full spellcaster, every single turn, they do not always cast a spell, a leveled spell. There are other things that they can use their talents for. And so this effectively just kind of gives you a direction to go. It's like, okay, well, we're going to make it better for you to cast cantrips, which is what this does. If you're wondering what it does, your cantrips deal extra damage equal to your wisdom modifier minimum 1. Effectively putting your cantrips on par or closer to on par to a multi-attack thing where you can add your ability modifier to it as well. The big difference being multi-attack, they get to add their ability modifier multiple times, whereas Empowered Cantrip, it only happens once. With Divine Strike, it only happens once because, again, as a full caster, it would be really, really unbalanced to make you as good of a non-resource based attacker at doing things. The people that are using the attack action, like fighters and barbarians and the things like that, need to still have things that make them special. So this just makes you competitive without making you as good as the people that specialize in it, if that makes sense. So if you're ever wondering, well, why in the world would you ever not have empowered cantrips? Because, you know, if you're a full spellcaster, why would you ever not cast spells? Well, there will be situations where you don't have a spell that's going to be really beneficial, and it's just better for you to either cast a cantrip or bop them in the nose. And that's what those two abilities are designed to do, is just kind of steer you in a direction of, okay, well, when you're going to be doing that, we're going to make it better for you to do this certain type of it. So yeah. Finally, at 17th level, you get Eclipse of Ill Omen. You can call upon the Vermilion Moon Ruidus to flare in the sky above you, eclipsing all other light. Its power surrounds you even where the sky can't be seen, and even on other planes. As a bonus action, I was looking for the part where it actually explained the mechanic. As a bonus action, you can manifest an aura, an area of reddish dim light in a 60-foot radius around you, which is massive. That's a 120-foot circle. In addition to the normal effects of dim light, creatures in the area make saving throws with disadvantage. When you create this eclipse, you can choose any number of creatures that are unaffected by it. This eclipse lasts while you concentrate, as if concentrating on a spell, for up to 1 minute. Concentrating on this feature counts as concentrating on a moon domain spell for the purpose of your Mind of Two Moons feature. Okay, this becomes super useful. As I mentioned before, a 60-foot radius circle is a 120-foot diameter circle. That is massive. That is the entirety of most battlegrounds in D&D 5th edition. If you are fighting on a map that is wider than 120 feet, your DM has gone the extra mile to create an interesting encounter. Or they just didn't realize how large the grid paper they bought was, and went, oh, damn, this is like 400 feet, isn't it? But you're never going to be doing that because, again, fast creatures can travel 60 feet in a turn, 120 feet if they dash. And that is the fastest characters in D&D can do that. Most characters, at most, when they dash, can cover 60 feet. So if you have to dash twice to get to the other side of the battlefield, that is a massive battlefield. So this is effectively everybody you don't like has disadvantage on all saving throws. This, combined with Mind of Two Moons, becomes very, very useful. Combine this with, again, I will say this over and over again because so many people forget this is a spell and have no idea how useful it is. Combine this with Fairy Fire, and you have a very, very upset final boss. They have disadvantage in all saving throws, and all attack rolls against them have advantage. Like, everything they do is screwed. Everyone's going to be able to hit them. They're not going to be able to save out of anything. They'll burn through all their legendary resistances. It's awesome. Other things like combine it with Moonbeam. Moonbeam, I believe, is a saving throw. I'm gonna before I completely talk out of my ass here, which I've already technically done, but what is it? Yeah, it's a con save, and they take 2d10 radiant damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. And you cast it at higher levels, you increase it by a d10 for each slot above 2nd level. So cast that at, let's call it 6th level, which is a pretty powerful, or let's go 5th level, just because 6th level spells are very, very rare. 5th level, 5th level, let's just spell, that's going to be 3d10, 4d10, that's 5d10. It's 5d10 damage every turn. And you can move it wherever you want so that if they're not starting their turn there, they will be. So yeah, and then they'll have disadvantage on this as a save, like, and it lasts for a minute. Like, it's just, that's super super cool. I really really love the synergy with Mind of Two Moons. Now, this is a 17th level ability. It is a useful 17th level ability, and theoretically by 17th level you have 3 uses of your channel divinity, so you can use this 3 times, which again, because it lasts for a minute is 10 rounds. Most combat lasts for between 5 and 6 rounds. It means this goes for the entirety of combat until you lose concentration. And there are a bunch of different things you can do to make it significantly easier for you to maintain concentration. Things like there's the War Mage feat that allows you to add extra stuff to your saves, things like that. So there's a bunch of different ways to just make it easier for you to maintain concentration. So yeah, it's a really powerful 17 level ability. But until you get that ability, Mind of Two Moons is severely underpowered. So I still kind of I still stand by my original critique of Mind of Two Moons, where I said, yeah, I think only one spell should have to be on the Moon Domain list. But with how powerful Eclipse of Ill Omen is, not just for the Cleric, but also for all of their allies, I would say if you change Mind of Two Moons where only one spell has to be on the Moon Domain spell list, I would say Eclipse of Ill Omen, take out the last part of that, to where if you're concentrating on Eclipse of Ill Omen, you're still, if you want to do the double dip on concentration, you're still going to have to choose a spell from the Moon Domain spell list. Because being able to concentrate on this plus any other spell you want to concentrate on, that becomes broken very, very quickly. But limiting this in the way that I did, where you're still only able to combine it with other Moon Domain spells, does make it still very, very useful, not only for, again, the Druid itself, but also, or not Druid, the Cleric itself. I'm literally looking at the word Druid right now, because Eclipse of Ill Omen, literally right next to it, in the next column over, it says Druid. They're on almost the same plane. The Cleric is going to benefit from it, but so is literally the entirety of the rest of the team. Almost every class has something that they can do that involves a saving throw. So this helps the entire team. And because of that, letting the Cleric be able to combine it with other spells would be massively broken. Final thoughts. Overall, I like this. This is very much a control-based subclass. I like control-based subclasses. It's one of the reasons I like the Monk so much. As much as a lot of people try to turn the Monk into a damage dealer because of all the attacks that they get, and the fact that their unarmed strike can eventually become a D10, which is really, really powerful compared to other weapons, the Monk isn't a damage dealing class. It never has been. It was not designed to be. If you try to create it and turn it into a damage dealing class, it doesn't work. The class was always designed to be a control-based class, and it was really, in the player's handbook, it was really the only control base class. The Battlemaster Fighter had some control abilities, but it still could be geared towards damage dealing, and it didn't do control nearly as well as the Monk. So I'm happy to see more control-based subclasses showing up. I think it's really, really fun. The issue with control-based classes is, in general, you're not going to be the one making this as a slam dunk. You're going to be setting up your team to do it. And some people don't like that. They want to be, at least every so often, they want to be the star. And control classes, in general, if you're playing them correctly, you're not ever going to be the star. You're going to be setting up the star. And that can be a hard pill for some players to swallow. That being said, this is a cool class. You know, A lot of the domain spells themselves are very action economy kind of focused. Clarity of Catha is an anti-action economy uh, limiter. Blessings of the Full Moon are definitely kind of action economy focused. Either increasing speed so that people can get the most benefit out of any kind of touch-based actions or melee actions, and then Blessing of the Blood Drenched Moon gives advantage. That's action economy control. Mind of Two Moons, again, is just an interesting ability that's a little bit too limited. Empowered Cantrips is what it is. And then Eclipse of Ill Omen is just massively cool action economy and manipulation. And when you combine it with the right things, it turns super, super, super cool. So, that being said, that is going to be all for me today. As always, again, like, subscribe, turn notifications on in the comments down below. With the change of Mind of Two Moons, where it turns into one spell of Moon Domain and one spell just from the Cleric's spell list, what really cool combo would you like to see with that? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys next time, all right? Bye-bye.